saved the crime scene for you.
Perfect. Anybody got a pen?
Yep,
Almost didn't.
almost. Let's see what we have.
I've got tons of them. Every time I go to Bar Harbor Bank, I take another pen. It's because,
You're not supposed to say that out
no,
loud.
no, it's because people don't want to touch them after you've touched them. So
Oh,
they tell you to keep them. I bet I've got 50 of them.
This is from the frame shop, what we're negotiating frame shop.
That's an interesting one.
I know, it's sharp, I didn't want to give it to Russ.
Something that's sharp? No, you don't.
I didn't print off how many minutes I should have.
No, I have copies for you.
Oh, you, thank you. Thank you.
And for you. It's one for you, Cap. Ed? Do you want the agenda, Ed? You saw that, that's right. Saw the agenda.
No, but
Oh.
I will see it.
Yeah, I think Sarah, I forwarded it to Sarah.
The thing here that I should know about it, what was the 2021 revised budget process?
Oh,
I
we
think
had
that-
talked about, I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
I think that they had tried to get everybody to go before the budget committee and the select board at the same time.
Oh, I mean, that was just a sort of formalities.
And,
I mean, I don't remember it being impactful.
right, well, I think that it just didn't work that well,
Right, yeah.
so. My personal opinion is the way it has been done for years, as long as it's timely, it's been fine. I don't know why the change, I
Right.
couldn't tell you. other than I think there were some selectmen that potentially didn't wanna go to a bunch of meetings.
Oh, that was what it was all about. I should have guessed.
Everybody read the minutes? Any corrections?
I'm fine.
Are you officially starting the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to accept the minutes
Yeah.
from May 4th, 2023.
Yes, I accept.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Departmental budget review.
I just make a notation
Yep.
that, for the record, we're really only looking at the expenses, which is only one piece of the budget. So the other piece is the revenue that the town gets, that never, you don't see back in the budget. And there are a number of departments that do have revenue that comes in. And some of them that I've noted is, the ambulance, because they receive reimbursement from the insurance company. The town clerk, reimbursement from the state, correct? No.
What?
Well, when you do your transactions, the
No.
money,
We don't-
No, that's all.
how does that work?
So when I take in a car registration, so the town portion stays within the town, the
Okay,
state
okay.
portion goes directly to the
Oh,
state.
okay, so it's not all of the revenue goes to the state and then they
No.
give back the
The
portion
town
allocated
gets
to
its
us?
portion, and the state goes to the state every night.
Okay, but we don't really see that in your budget.
That
as
is something
revenue.
that I spoke with Sarah today, and Dottie is trying to do a thing in QuickBooks so that we get a review every month of
Oh, good, okay, that would be beneficial. And then, I guess the highway department gets grants, right?
they get the block grant,
Yeah.
which we're aware of.
Yeah,
We're
we see
aware
that.
of, but
Yeah.
we don't actually see it coming into their budget, is what I'm saying.
Well, we're made aware of what, like in October, the states,
And I think Sandy's saying you don't see the big picture. But we
Right,
really need to see
so,
the big
yeah,
picture.
Mhm.
Because we'll spend our time nickel and diming, and sometimes we lose the thread of perhaps being able to spend a little in order to save a little down the road.
All right, thank you for summarizing what I was saying.
I'm
Great,
sorry, I
thank
didn't
you.
mean to interrupt.
The recreation department gets donations for 4th of July, for example. I don't know what does the planning board get actual fees from
I
people?
don't believe so.
Oh, okay. Speeding tickets, what happens with speeding tickets?
The town gets zero.
Yeah, no,
It all goes
but
to
there
the
is one, police reports that go to insurance companies and things like that. It comes in $25 at a time,
Mhm.
and it just goes into a general, fund.
Mhm.
So, that, it would be good if you guys knew how much money the transfer station generates, how much money
Right, well, that's,
EMS generates.
Dottie is working on
Great.
doing
Sure.
QuickBooks.
Yep,
so-
and it's advantageous because I think that for years, this board has tried to take into consideration the money that comes in, and they use that. I mean, the library has to use a portion of their money, EMS has to use a portion of their money, so you need to know what it is. So, I think it's a great idea.
And there's, the sanitation department. We do get money for aluminum, correct?
Right,
And paper except now.
well.
That's obsolete at the
and-
moment.
And that's one case where it's not launched very much.
Um,
Good case being is last year, they spent $18,000 out of that account, which that should never been spent. And that falls back onto the select board for not following through, because that money can only be spent on recycling purposes. And they took and they went and paved the parking lot, which was nice, but that money should never have been spent on paving.
So it's
Well-
not, the money isn't necessarily generated and they're not necessarily allowed to spend it on the grounds, is what you're
Right.
saying?
Yes.
But so where's the cutoff? I mean, if you needed to build a new building, could you build a new building?
Depends on what it was used for. It's like the money could be used
It's at the
for,
transfer station, so,
yes, but it's gotta be recycling purposes only,
okay, so just to recycle.
yeah,
And why is that? Is it because that the
because that's the way,
warrant article was written that way?
no, that's what the state took and set that fund up as.
Well,
Okay.
the registration was originally written that way. I mean, that means you always have to juggle, you know, we need a new building, it's not necessarily for recycling, so we'll take one of the buildings that is there already, give it to recycling, we'll build new, I mean, you know, so that we fudge the fund up.
Sure, I mean, they can be creative, I guess, if that's what you're trying to say.
Creative, that's a
but
much better word.
It, like it's been said, it's money that this board doesn't really know anything about,
Right.
So, and I see that you guys have been talking about a CIP, which is phenomenal. I think that when I see the budget committee, I think it's next week, so I'll touch base on that and I'll ask them, I'll even make a motion to request a CIP from,
Angus, you're talking about?
yes,
Yeah.
from every department. It's not a big deal. The planning board needs something to work with. It's very hard to create something out of thin air. So if we hear from each department head, we can probably put something together at that point. It'll be Grafton's very
Well, at
first.
least the planning board
CIP.
is receptive to the idea.
They were, and they're kind of,
Because I've met Angus and I talked to
I
him.
missed the last meeting, so, I just totally forget some of these meetings.
You'll forgive me.
So I don't know, I think they're kind of waiting for me
Mhm.
to actually, so it's time now, because we gotta give the department heads up. And I think doing it during the budget process is best for this group, the selectmen, and probably department heads, because they can, when they're thinking about money, they can think about the future,
Mm,
so.
Sounds like a plan.
I know, we talked before, when you were chief, and I spoke to you after that, not all things haven't been done, but, the police department having, set up so that they could take and go out on a police detail in other towns and get paid, and that money comes into the police department.
They need a revolving fund.
Right.
Exactly. Because that is a source of revenue, or
Mm.
would be a source of revenue, but because they don't have a revolving fund, the selectmen refused to open a revolving fund for me because it was another revolving fund. But the problem with it is, now Grafton has no way of making money. I mean, they could be making $25 an hour for one of their police officers.
Now,
To be
that's
simple.
in addition to them getting paid.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's right around $75 an hour. Our
Wow.
police officer only makes like $30 an hour, so,
Except
You do.
I'd be very cautious about leaving the town short-handed.
oh yeah, no,
I agree,
I'm
but-
very cautious about
no,
because that $75 an hour is gonna look a lot better than what they're gonna get paid here in
Right,
town.
but my thing being is, right now, Sam Frank is, out, working other than,
I mean, he's only hired as part-time.
no, but still, if he was,
Right, he's going to Hanover, and he's getting $64 an hour to be on patrol, so I mean,
But
yeah,
that's
they're gonna
outside of his
choose.
scheduled hours with
Right.
us.
That's it, as
Yeah.
long as they don't leave the town short.
Mhm.
Exactly, I mean, I agree with you, not leaving
I
town
mean,
short.
we don't have a lot of police.
No.
Nonetheless, I mean, there's other examples, like they did some paving on Route 4 a couple of years ago, and they wanted us, and I couldn't help them because we didn't have anything set up. They ran some wires over through Grafton, I actually did it for absolutely nothing, and then when I crossed the Enfield-Grafton line, I signed up for Enfield time, so Grafton, again, got absolutely nothing. I think Mitchell turned down some of the Route 4 stuff that has just gone on with the wires and stuff like that because he didn't have anything set up. So it could be it's been mentioned, Mitchell and I have spoken about it, and it
What is the
should be
opposition?
implemented. The opposition is it's too much work. It's not too much work. That was the opposition that I had
Too much work for who?
12 years ago. Well, I think at the time, who was 12 years, like, I don't even know who was on the board or who was the treasurer, but it's a combination of both that have
Well,
to,
it seems high time that we should
it's a warrant article
bring this thing up
that
again.
needs to go on, as far as I know.
Does it have to be one?
So, that I don't know, that I can inquire.
How
I
did
know,
the recreation get set up? Was a warrant article, wasn't it?
That's years ago.
So who's on, so only the
So-
ambulance and the rec committee, they're the only ones right now that have revolving accounts?
No,
Oh, the dump,
the-
the recycle center.
and I
Is the
think
library?
the EMS, right?
Yes, the
Yes.
ambulance does.
So there's EMS,
Oh,
transfer
that's
station,
right.
the rec field,
So the newest one on was the ambulance,
I think
Yeah,
so.
that would have been the newest one on.
right.
So I can talk to Sam about it, he's got some information, I think he set up the one that Kane has, just for that purpose. Cause there's no reason to not collect monies if you can, you know, and here's the thing, the construction companies that come through town, or the construction companies that may be in Danbury or something like that, they need the help, they need people to be there, you know, and it's very hard to find police officers to do that.
What's the program called? Does it have an official name?
No, it's just, it's any type of, if it's a safety issue, as far as the road's concerned, then they like to have blue lights there.
Mhm.
And sometimes state actually requires it.
So you want to call it safety duty?
Yeah, I guess that's,
Okay.
A quick question about the transfer station. What's the effect of no longer getting rid of paper
what is the effect of it?
financially? Is it going to cost more?
I think we would have to look to see, I'm sure it's gonna cost more if you have to dump it instead of recycle it.
I mean, because it's a big deal as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
Having more paper to throw away than anything else.
Well, I think what it came down to was, the mixed paper was going to Casella up in White River.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Casella stopped taking the mixed paper from Grafton. I don't know why.
Discrimination.
And no
Well,
idea.
apparently I heard something that they could take it, but it would have to go 3 times further and it would cost twice as much. Oh,
Right, that's what I heard. It would have to go down to Mass.
mm.
And we would have to truck it always down Mass. Whereas what's happening with it, it was going up to White River Junction to Casella.
Right.
And for some reason, Casella's not taking Grafton's mixed paper.
So I guess in order to answer your question, I'd have to
I mean, I just
figure out how many trips they used to take, how many trips they take now.
I mean, but this is going to put pressure on the budget for the sanitation department.
The tonnage, the price in the tonnage wasn't that much difference.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's we'll find out when he submits his budget. So, I don't sit on this board, I think it's Jenny, right, that sits on this board. But I know historically, the selectmen put out a request for a budget. And the request is, they just want this one-page Excel spreadsheet filled out. What last year was, what next year is.
Well, I was trying to do a spreadsheet for going from 2018 up to now, and I had a little problem with the computer, everything got wiped out, but I was trying to do a whole spreadsheet so that we could have a sort of bird's eye view of where our costs were going over time.
Does anybody happen to have one of those spreadsheets from any time?
I do.
I do.
Okay.
In the office.
But you're familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So, the problem is, that spreadsheet does not tell you guys anything. It really doesn't. It tells you, gives you some sort of an idea. I'll give you a good example. The department head goes to the budget committee and they see wages. Wages have not changed at all. And what they don't know is that there's 3 or 4 different people's wages in there. So the numbers have been jumped around from one to the next. Maybe the hours were lowered so this person could get a raise, or that. You need to know that. So requesting a written document that tells you what is in that spreadsheet, like a real budget,
But we do see that,
you see,
yes.
We see
Where
the
do you see
detail,
Yeah, in detail.
which is, you know, the sheets that follow this. We would have a year-end
okay,
spreadsheet.
so it's just
but
the
it doesn't-
selectmen that don't see it.
But it doesn't,
Am I
but I
right?
think you're right though, Russ, that it doesn't have any explanation
Right.
associated to it. It's just saying that we're paying this person X
Mhm.
for that week,
And,
year.
you know, I don't wanna make them work it any harder than what they work, but I think that it's a professional thing. Everybody does it. Every department head that I know of everywhere that works, just write a budget. Don't write an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, put that in there,
Mhm.
but give me a budget. And it's an explanation. You know, highway uses X amount of fuel per year because these trucks take 6 gallons per mile. We drove them 15,000 miles last year. You know, without the explanation, and all you get is a request for 18.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, how beneficial is it really to this committee if a department head comes in here for 20 minutes and talks to you? And then you leave with just that spreadsheet. You don't have, I mean, yeah, they may have touched base on 50% of the reason why they want the money that they want. And then how much do you forget when you walk out the door? You know what I mean? If you had an actual budget with you, you could flip through it and say, okay, that's why that was that way.
And you're right, and partially the problem I think has been in the past is that too much historical information is looked at. We don't look at the needs.
Right, so,
It's, if you look, and I only spent $500 this year on envelopes, then, and I've asked for
So you
1,000,
can't have that
they
all
all,
the
the
time.
budget committee or the select board takes away. They didn't understand that I didn't order any last year because I was trying to save, and I need that $1,000.
exactly.
And that's not what happens. They look at historical, and they don't ever think about what we really need.
But if you had an actual budget that
Exactly.
explains that,
Right, And now I'm at a total loss because 2 years ago, the select board changed all my categories and gave me this gross-based budgeting, and I have no idea where they came up with those figures or how they took away money from one category and put it into something that doesn't make any sense. No sense whatsoever. Like, they took a huge amount of money and put it into training. I hardly use anything for training, so now, I don't know, it's so messed up.
But the categorization should not prevent you from spending the money where you need to spend it.
No, it
I
doesn't.
do spend it where I need it,
Right.
But it does
The idea
get
is-
but
confusing.
it doesn't look
You know.
fair to the taxpayers.
Exactly.
It's not transparent.
Not at all.
Right, exactly.
Not at all.
No, which is why sometimes I think this over-categorization is completely unnecessary. What does this department need to function? And what are the sort of extenuating circumstances that might mean they have to spend something extra because something comes up which doesn't come up in the normal course of events?
Exactly. My shredder died a month ago. I don't have money to buy a new shredder.
Well, I'll shred for you.
No, you won't.
You've got enough paper.
It's confidential.
I'm just joking.
So, right, I think that when the request goes out for budgets, it should be a written budget, not just a spreadsheet,
Right,
an explanation.
right, because 2 years ago, the selectmen changed the whole process, so they wanted the budget committee here, and the selectmen, when they took them, did it. So I was here, the other members boycotted the meeting, and I sat here and listened to the departments. And some of the departments only gave some information, and then when I asked for them to come in front of the budget committee, we got more information out of them than the select board did.
Right.
So it's like,
You should be getting the same information.
exactly, but we weren't.
And that's what happens if you don't have something in front of you that the department head can go through and say, yep, we touched base on that, we touched base on that, you understand this. So, I think that asking for a budget, whether it's a 2-page explanation or whether it's a 12-page explanation.
But we don't have a problem with that, that makes it easier for us, it's like Bonnie
Responsibility
said.
is that though,
Yeah.
since the select
She
board
could take
initiated.
and make
Sure.
reference to, all right, I bought envelopes 3 years ago, but I had able to buy enough to carry me for a couple of years. So that's why last year, if you look at my budget, I didn't put in any money for envelopes. But this year I do.
And I don't know what you get from the select board, but that's what I've always done. I put an explanation on the bottom, why I'd asked for increases or not.
Sure.
I've always,
Right, but you're one of the few that we get that from. And the others just jot down numbers and that's it. It's like, and then we ask them, and, well, all right, then it's like you said, they get out the door, and the other thing that I find is the select board is supposed to be more informed on every day what these department heads are doing, whereas the budget committee, we don't get to see all of that.
Right.
So is it the select board's
So,
responsibility
I think
then?
it's any professional board's responsibility to ask for it. How can you do your job without it?
Right.
But I'm
So-
saying though that the select board starts
Well,
the budget process.
we request a budget to be turned in, to be reviewed, and then passed on to you guys. I am going to ask for a full budget, not just an Excel spreadsheet. So you guys don't necessarily have to do that. Now, but there's only, that's me. I'm not really a selectman as one, so I've got to get the other two convinced that that's the best way to go.
Okay, so you're gonna approach that with the
I will.
other members, okay.
It's also gonna give these department heads, information that they need. You know, they're gonna have to look things up. They're gonna have to do a little bit of work and understand their job a little bit better because they have to write it down. So,
If there is an issue on the budget, like for recording purposes, for example. And to give you an example of that, I noticed that on the, where is it, the dispatch fees, like more than $20,000 has been spent, but that does not show up in the select board's budget for Hanover Dispatch. So we have the summary, but where is the detail for that?
So is that in the selectmen's budget for this year, or was it
It was changed.
gonna be
Yeah.
next year?
No, it's in
Well,
this
it's
year.
in the department, you're saying it's on page 2.
Well, look
It's
at,
the dispatch fee.
Yeah, the dispatch fee overall, but that's a summary. So when you go to the select board's page, and it says Hanover Dispatch, it says 0.
yeah, so it seems to me like the selectmen are taking money, from the departments or something? Is that what it seems like?
No, they
That's right-
consolidated to
That's right
funnel
in
it.
the selectmen's budget.
Yeah.
So how are they getting paid, I wonder? That's a
Maybe they are.
good question.
We've been known in the past not to pay people.
But I guess the point or the question I was asking is if we
But
see
wasn't that
something
divided? Didn't they do something really screwy last year?
They
That's why Mitch had such,
consolidated it.
Yes.
right, that's why Mitch had such a hard time figuring out
It's
what
a
it is.
very, very simple formula.
Midge's,
It's-
that's the pager that he's being charged for.
Dispatch.
Although it says dispatch fees / pager,
Right.
I think
There
he's got the
happens-
pager.
There happens to be a couple of things in that line item. One was dispatch fees, one was, it's not a pager, but it's wireless cards for the cruiser, and like subscriptions type things, for dispatch items, in other words.
So
Like
should
there's
dispatch
nothing-
be eliminated as that part of that line item for the police department budget?
Yes and no.
Dispatch itself, but not the so-called pager. A pager was yesterday's technology. Today, that's been replaced with, for example, if he gets another computer, then, or another cruiser, then that line item will go up because he'll have to have another computer in there. That is no fault of, that's completely separate from EMS and the way they operate, fire, the way they operate. The actual calls that come in, let's see if I can remember it. The formula is based on population. Well, first and foremost, it's a flat fee. Dispatch makes everybody pay a flat fee. Say there's like 35 different agencies or something like that. And then they go based on volume of calls and also population. So because they did that, they get the best balance. You don't have people who've been with dispatch forever paying these small little fees, and then
Other towns absorb it.
right, other towns are paying a huge fee because it was, at the time, it was nothing but you pay for the amount of calls that you take. And so they switched it anyway. And then Grafton gets one bill for that. So they have to separate it out. What you do is the flat fee is a flat fee for EMS and fire. It's the same. It's a flat fee for the PD. So you know that flat fee. And then you know what the population fee is because it's written on the invoice.
Is that proportional?
Is it what?
Proportional? I
So
mean,
what?
to what our population is versus somebody else's population?
Dispatches, and even on that.
Yeah, our population. So when I say it's per population, I mean, say they charge $3 for every person in Grafton. They charge $3 for every person in Canaan.
So
They just happen to
it
have
happens
more
to be a lot more
population. So Canaan's dispatch bill will be more than ours. And then they go by calls, which is Canaan obviously goes on more calls than Grafton, so another reason why they've got an inflated bill. I mean, I think their dispatch is like 60 grand. Canaan and Enfield is quite a bit.
Well, I guess my point was to,
But I
like,
can't find it anywhere.
no, it's not
It's not in
there.
the police, it's not
It's
in the
not.
ambulance, it's not in the selectmen's
It was,
budget.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be in the selectmen's budget, but it's zero.
I don't see it.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're
it's,
fine.
it's
Why is
zero,
it zero?
because the bill didn't come in yet. Yeah, you're looking at
No, I'm looking at summary.
Yeah, the
The
summary
summary is
says it's been
20,000,
spent.
right? Mhm.
Right. The
It's
summary says it's
20,000.
been spent, $20,045.46, but it's not anywhere.
Well, you get it every 6 months, so there should only be half
Well,
spent
I
at this
can't
point.
find any of it.
Here it is here, Bonnie. Hanover dispatch, zero.
Right, but I'm
That's-
saying I can't see any of the
No,
breakdown.
it's not in the budget, it should be in the selectmen's budget, and it's not there.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
So I guess, you know, like, if it's really for the police department's wireless, that figure is in there, then dispatch should be eliminated,
From,
and the terminology should be upgraded.
there you go, I agree.
So, you know, like, I'd be happy to approach Sarah, but I really don't think it's my position to do.
No, I
It's a selectmen's position.
Right. I mean, I wanna know whether or not, you know, so it's been a year for me, I can't remember at this point, but I'm pretty sure that, I know that Hanover has a fiscal year of July, we end up getting the bill in July, we end up getting the bill at the end of the year. And the bill at the end of the year is actually to pay for the next year, or something like that. It's not, so it could change halfway through the year, it doesn't correspond with
Well,
our budget.
because their year is different, so it would change mid-year.
Right, so they have their meetings in July, and they could change the
Right.
pricing. But it doesn't change enough that you can't typically absorb it in your budget somewhere.
Yes, but see, that's the end of June, it's right here. Hanover dispatch, zero.
Zero. But on the summary sheet, it shows that
On the first page.
on the first second, 20,000's been paid, but where's the 20,000?
Right, yeah, you're right, because it should show under, here, they got that for the budget, $0.
Mm-hmm.
And that should read
20,000.
Right.
should be, 25,000.
So it might be maybe it was putting the computer wrong, or
Yeah,
was
it's gonna be, because they just paid a bill for 20,000 something dollars.
I'll try to get an answer for that.
Because it was raised in the selectmen's budget,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have it down here.
Can I ask a question about gas?
Sure.
Okay. The highway department has their own pump, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's from Evans Fuel?
Yeah.
Okay, and I noticed that ambulance and fire, they also have Evans Fuel. Do they all go to the highway department and
Yes.
fill? Okay, so what happens in that situation is Jeffrey's budget,
No,
no, how does it work?
because when any department head that's got access to the gas, there's a sheet down there for every department to take and fill out how many gallons they took, who took it, and the date that they took it.
And then it gets appropriated to the proper
Right.
department
Yes.
jail? Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know if this is appropriate for the budget, but there was an issue about the highway department spending an enormous amount of time on repairing things and not taking care of the roads. Is that going to be reflected perhaps in a different way? They'll run things and they'll hire somebody and it'll appear as a budget item. The hiring out for repairs.
That shows up in yours, the summary.
This is, so, part of what you're saying is exactly why we need to ask for a budget. Because he needs to explain, I spend so many hours working on, say, the apparatus. That's why I need certain apparatus. Or I need to hire a mechanic because we're not technically mechanics and maybe the work that we do isn't gonna last like it would if it was, you know, in other words, we're doing the work twice. So it essentially costs us the same as if we had sent it out to get repaired. Or, even worse, we completely ruin the thing and then we have nothing to work with at that point.
You have to buy a new one.
Right, so explanation in the budget, and even, so I mean, I can tell you that I broke down his hours for maybe the first 3 months, and the hours that he spent repairing things during the winter time far exceeded what it would cost to have a mechanic at the highway garage. So it would be cheaper, believe it or not, to hire a mechanic to work down there and fix the stuff.
But also,
And
if
it's
he was
fixed
spending all
properly.
those hours repairing things not very efficiently, he wasn't plowing the roads or whatever.
That's the other side of it, is Grafton actually has a repair shop, or at least then they had a repair shop. They didn't have a highway department. And that's a problem.
Also related to the highway department, we have I don't know if this shows up every year, I can't remember, but to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for purpose of paving town roads. Why isn't that part of the operating budget? Is that
Why?
because it could be spent on other things?
Yes,
It just is to hold their feet to the fire.
it's to hold the feet to the fire, because what was happening years ago was, it was in their budget, so
And nothing happened.
and nothing happened. That could be spent anywhere else, so no paving was being done. So what paved roads you had would fall apart, and it was easy for them to say, we get no money for paving. 'Cause
No, I understand that, but it seems to me unfortunate that we have to do it that way.
Well, that's actually a good explanation, because I had the same question. You know, stuff that you use every single year, why are you not budgeting for it?
Well, I was looking to
Because-
see, because we
Because
sometimes,
here's the thing,
we sometimes used to have sand and so
I can ask for $30,000 worth of gravel.
Mhm.
If I don't get that by way of warrant article, then I have no gravel to work on. It's not in my budget. You see what I'm saying?
Which is
So-
ridiculous.
That just doesn't make any sense. Gravel needs to be in your budget. As far as I'm concerned.
Plus the
Anything.
law says no is no, so you
Right,
can't
right.
use that 30,000 for gravel.
If
You've
it
already
says no,
told
you can't use your budget to buy gravel.
Exactly, you can't,
Nothing.
the law says.
So then
No,
you're,
it's
you
not.
But the townspeople feel better knowing that $50,000 has to be used on paving.
no, I can understand the theory, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there is a small amount of paving money in the
In
budget.
the budget, yes.
So that if the town does say no, if there are potholes and things like that, they can be repaired.
Right.
And I think that's probably best practice if people are concerned that the money's not gonna be spent on what they approved it for. Just make sure that it's in both the budget and in a warrant.
He's getting his new truck soon.
Should be, so the implements are being put on it.
Supposed to be next month sometime, yeah. That was the last update I heard, and the other day was only a couple weeks away.
Yeah, okay, good, because they certainly could use it.
Who's the new person they just hired?
Mike Darrow. Steve Darrow's son. What's the process on this other guy that's applied? How long is that guy gonna sit and then if we
I'm
need-
trying to say I'm trying to be professional, and not talk about employees. I guess the process is the process, you know what I mean? You put in an application. I know that I've, been throwing it around the office to, let's get this done, because it needs to be quicker. But,
I mean, what I heard before was that Mike Darrow was, he was in the loop for weeks before, and here we are, we're advertising for employees, for new
I
employees.
don't read, look,
I know, but.
I can't say anything bad about employees, but there's an issue there. You know what I mean? There needs to be more communication amongst department heads and the selectmen. And things need to run smoother. Now, with that said, I think that this year has been a whole lot better than the previous years. I think that we're going in the right direction, but there are hurdles that need to be jumped over, and that's one of them.
I mean, in previous years, we haven't been able to get anybody, and now we get people
I know.
that sign.
I'm with you. Now's the time to jump on it.
But
Exactly.
I agree, there's a process, and that's to benefit us too.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure
Yeah, we gotta go
that
through
we're
the
getting the
process.
right people. We don't want
No,
bodies.
right, no, I don't
We
disagree.
don't want bodies.
But this is a small town. That process can be streamlined right down to like a week.
Really.
It doesn't need to stretch out for a
Background
month
checks
and a
everything
half.
be done in a week?
Yeah, well, no, so,
I don't know. the answer.
what you do is you hire a person, based on everything coming back perfectly fine. Now, they can start working and they can go through training and stuff like that. But if it's a contingency. Look, if you don't pass the background check, well, guess what? You're not working for us now. You signed that saying that, so you're hired based on certain things, like your driver's license comes back and is good, or your criminal record comes back and it's okay. It's important to get people there and get them started. And most people, after the interview, I don't know what they used to do, but I go there and we do perfectly fine interviews now. There's not much left on the table after an interview. So, and you can tell when you interview a person whether or not they want to work for you. So the process should be pretty smooth and pretty quick in Grafton.
Right, but it's not, because this is the second guy that's
I know,
filed an application,
I know it isn't,
and
But I don't think that's a budget committee
no, it's
No.
not.
concern. We
It's
shouldn't be
not.
discussing,
Yeah, it's definitely a selectman issue, and it's a
Yeah,
hurdle.
we
to
should be-
selectmen.
discussing personnel.
Yeah, well, it may not be our issue directly, but it is also our issue that we have good employees that work well, so that the budget is well spent too.
Sure, I understand that. Yep. Know that we're working on it.
from a selectman's point of view, what do you see coming forward during budget season that we should be prepared for?
I think you're gonna see a very spiked highway budget for several reasons. There's some work that has not been, some regular maintenance that hasn't been done, even on the last year that our other road agent was here. And it's gonna get very costly to fix the roads if that stuff doesn't get done. Also, the apparatus really is, like I said, it breaks when you actually try to go out and work it. No, it's not just that. You're working it, but you also have people who are completely green and they don't understand how you have to take care of, that an old truck doesn't drive like a brand new truck. So they break. An old piece of equipment doesn't drive like a brand new piece of equipment, so they break. They've got to start, they need a CIP and they need to really show what the increases are going to be in their budget. And they need to show it for